no, nothing to see here. Nope.
This movie was the slowest, most boring piece of shit I've ever seen. That's not true. That's exaggerating, but
it's the worst kind of screenplay that you can write for any kind of character because it doesn't rely on a character. It just relies on things you know.
Yeah, and it's so calculated and safe to the degree that it's not fun. I have to compare this movie to the Woody Woodpecker movie of a few years ago. Did you see that?
No. There was a Woody the Woodpecker movie?
Yeah. It's basically the same as this movie, where it's a CGI crazy character who's like living in the wild, and then he becomes friends with these humans, and then he has to like help solve the human problems, kind of. They took that formula with no self-awareness. So like, dude, we want Woody to be the coolest character ever. So they have him like playing the drums, and he keeps making these quips to the camera, and he's like doing these crazy things, but it's beyond the level that you might expect. So it was quite funny because it was so stupid. But this movie is so safe. See, it's like they probably saw Woody Woodpecker and they're like, that's going a little too far. So they reined it in. They had a little barrier. They're like, nope, you got to only go this far, and that's as far as you can go. And as a result, this movie is boring as heck.
But Chris, she was like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah.
She was basically Obi-Wan Kenobi. If Obi-Wan Kenobi had a beak and ate mice.
Oh, the owl mentor. Right.
Yes, in the very beginning of the film. Yeah, I completely agree. Everything in this film was just kind of referential and just things you know. They didn't care enough about creating a interesting enough character with Sonic. They just thought that, okay, he's going to be the vehicle for things that people know, and he likes to go fast. Like, that's his only character trait, is that he likes to go fast. That's it.
Yep, that is the character of Sonic.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you are completely right. It goes safe. There's nothing about it that makes it interesting at all. The only part that I actually did find interesting was the beginning. I really wish that we would have stayed in Sonic's world.
Yes.
Like, it was the video game world, and it had all this interesting stuff going on. Sonic goes to meet with his mentor owl person, and then there's these little gremlins that are going to try to go and hunt Sonic. But what's interesting is that they don't show up for the rest of the film. You know, usually in the beginning of your film, that's when you usually want to introduce your villains, but they never bring those villains back. I just thought that was such a weird choice. I mean, there's so many bizarre choices in this film.
Thematically, this movie is the most bland, generic family film with themes of like your home and your family, who's your real family, right? Where do you belong?
I'm gonna be alone forever.
I really am alone.
Yeah, and you know what? That's exactly right. They borrow from other films and then they just put it in here. Like the opening, I really hated because it was just such a jarring opening. There wasn't really any big reveal, and they did the trope that's in a lot of films where it's just like, I guess you're wondering how I got here. Like, I've seen that a billion times. yeah. And,
I hate that so much.
Yeah. Oh, and then another great moment of that is like when he references Dr. Robotnik. He's like, he is a handlebar mustache from the Civil War. Like, how does Sonic know that? And again, he doesn't have a personality. He's just a vehicle to shove things into so that people will be like, oh, I get that reference. It's like Date Movie or Epic Movie. Like, I get reference.
Exactly. But the problem with Sonic is that he's not funny. All of the lines are so safe and bland.
Yeah, there was only about 2 or 3 jokes that actually, no. 3 is
there's a handful of decent. There were a couple of decent moments that made me smile a little bit, maybe. So I overall liked Jim Carrey. I think he was fun. He was like, you disagree.
Yes, I do.
There are definitely things I didn't like about it. Mainly, I thought his like picking in his assistant character was pretty dumb. But he overall exuded fun to me. I liked the moment where his assistant brings him a coffee, and he like very angrily, he's like yelling at him. He says,
"What do I look like, an imbecile? Of course I want a latte. I love the way you make them."
But he's like yelling at like he's being mean, but it's like obviously a nice thing to say. So a little moment like that I enjoyed. I'm sure there was another moment that I enjoyed, but I can't remember it right now.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely little tiny pieces of slivers that you could take out of this film where it's like, okay, that was actually kind of funny, clever writing, but there's so far and few in between all of the garbage that you have to get through.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know. I didn't like Jim Carrey because I actually found him more annoying than Sonic.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. With Jim Carrey, I guess with his personality, it just seemed so much way more chaotic. I couldn't really get a grasp on who he was necessarily as a character. I don't know. It was just so over the top and zany, I guess.
Interesting, because to me, his character worked better than anyone else's character because, yes, he was this extreme control freak who obviously projected this arrogance over everybody. But he told us his backstory of like, I was bullied and then I swore I'd never be bullied again, essentially. So it's like an extreme reaction to being bullied. Like, all right, I can buy that. And if it wasn't for him, I don't see how that character could have been done in a different way that wouldn't have caused my brain to like fall asleep like the rest of the movie did.
Yeah, I guess. If I really had to boil it down, I mean, again, it's just this script is just so uninteresting and so boring. And
it's terrible. Terrible script. Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me correct that. Super generic script. Incredibly, like to the nth degree generic script. There's nothing interesting about the script at all.
I was almost thinking to myself, like, oh, is this as boring as Aladdin, or is this just completely different? Because I just remember, like, me sitting down and just watching Sonic, I was so emotionless. There was no kind of peaks and valleys in terms of emotions at all for me.
I mean, yeah, like, honestly, I would put it in the same basket as Aladdin. Like, I was pretty darn bored watching that too, and I wouldn't say either one made me angry. I mean, Aladdin had more moments of like me getting really irritated, I think. Probably.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of people are tied to that emotionally, since a lot of it goes back to people's childhoods. Like that's attached to. Yeah, that's like you have some emotional reference to that. I guess you could say the same with Sonic, but Sonic you actually have some more leeway because. I mean, you kind of have a generic character of who he is.
Right.
But at the same time, you have all this freedom to be like, oh, well, we could add this in here. We could add that. But instead, it's just vehicle machine.
Right.
Like the biggest thing that really annoyed me was the Olive Garden campaign. In the beginning, it's the main character and his wife, and they just toss it out there where they say,
in the Olive Garden.
Because when you're there,
Your family.
And it's and then at the end of the movie, the U.S. government pays them with a $50 gift card to Olive Garden. It's like, just stop. The one thing that I can say about it is I just wish that there were more people that actually had passion to make video games into film. And I think that this is the biggest issue is that with any kind of video game property, they're not confident enough for it to uphold itself, for it to create these pedestals where it's like, oh, it's big, it's giant.
Right.
We can depend on this. Instead, they have to rely on some external factors to lift it up. They just don't have any confidence in it. And it's really a shame because it's even giving video game movies a further bad rap. Before the movie even begins, they have this Marvel-esque logo where it's the Sonic screen and then the camera pans backwards and then it shows all these like little bits of information of different video games that Sega has made and all that. It's like, oh god, no, they're gonna make a universe, aren't they? They're gonna try it. Like that's exactly what it gave to me, and I think it is because the movie had a $95 million budget and it grossed $306.8 million.
Well, they're definitely making a sequel. I would be surprised if they have some sort of universe. Like, what are you gonna tie in, like Space Harrier or like? What other Sega series, like Streets of Rage or something? Like, what are you gonna do?
Sega doesn't really have anything that's interesting to really tie it into. It's kind of like DC. They only have a handful of superheroes, whereas Marvel has a ton.
Right, but one of the huge difference there, though, is at least DC was making stories. These old games don't have stories. Like, they were just making random. Like, okay, let's make a shooter game. What's the character's name? I don't care. They're just throwing stuff out there back then. And yeah, I mean, the games were fun back in the day, but it's you taking those and trying to assemble a universe like that's so weird that I would love it if this movie had any weirdness to it, but it doesn't. It's so safe that I can't expect anything interesting out of the future. So even with some sort of weird idea like that, like which I would normally be in favor of, I don't see any flavor here. It's so flavorless that I can't. I mean, the only hope I'd have for a sequel here is if it's actually in the Sonic's world and it's more fantastical a bit. Like, okay, that might be more fun than all these boring human characters that I could not they could not leave my screen quickly enough.
Yeah, and that's the other issue with it, is that you fall into this trap that a lot of movies have where they introduce these human characters. No one cares about the human characters. I don't know who this guy is. You know, that actually kind of ties into another big thing that we actually haven't talked about, which is the character reanimation of Sonic. I was actually hoping for them to keep that in there, because at least it would have been so frightening and disgusting that I probably would have gotten a little bit more enjoyment out of it. I wish that they actually kept that. Like,
it would give a totally different visceral reaction to the film to have that old version in there instead of this one.
Yeah, because with this one it's good that they actually listen.
I mean, like, from an objective standpoint, like, it's not offensive, it's fine, but it's also boring.
Yeah, it's fine, but that's the thing. They were fixing it like, oh, look, all the problems in the Sonic movie are saved. Like, that was the only problem that people had with the film. Like, no, that's not it. It really just paints a bad picture for video game films. Apparently, Illumination is making a Super Mario Brothers animated film right now. So,
yep, and that'll probably be, I mean,
generic.
Yes, generic as heck, safe, but probably more interesting than this, because at least, you know, it'll be all CG, and I imagine it'll all take place like in the Mushroom Kingdom or something. So I guess that'll be more interesting than this. But Illumination just has a track record of very safe, you know, kind of boring films. Not terrible, but they're dull in my opinion. So. Okay, I'll probably like it more than this. I'm guessing.
It's the same problem with the Transformers films that Michael Bay made.
Yes.
It has humans in it, but I don't care about the humans.
But it's not impossible. Remember Bumblebee? Bumblebee actually did it.
Yeah, Bumblebee did actually do it, but I guess my main issue is that it's such a trope now to have these characters hang out with humans, because no one's going to understand it unless humans are in it. Yeah. So you can do it, but I just wish that there was so much less of it. I just wish that I could just go visit, I don't know, like the robot world where Optimus Prime lives or something like that. You could do it, but you need to make it fit within the theme of the film. So with Bumblebee, at least the main actress, she was going through this time when she was trying to figure out herself, and oh, look, she's got alien boyfriend. Like, okay, that's cute, that works. But with these other human characters, it's like it just doesn't build on top of each other. Because they focus so little time on the script and they only rely on promotional material, it harms the film, because now I don't care about Sonic. I don't care about the cop guy. I don't care about his wife or his girlfriend or whatever. And I just don't care about anyone because there's no characters there. It's just referential humor. And when you start doing that, then there's just nothing, and I'm not rooting for anyone. And then when they actually try to make you feel anything and those parts do come up, then I just don't care, because now it just feels like that I'm being force-fed this thing.
So who would you recommend this movie to, Spencer?
No one.
No one, really? Wow.
No one. Absolutely no one. Nope, no one. Okay, maybe to younger people. Like, maybe if you're still in the womb and you can't perceive anything besides, you know, maybe auditory things, then maybe. I mean, at that point, maybe the audio from the Sonic the Hedgehog movie will do something to your brain, and maybe you won't come out right, so maybe not do that. So, yes, no one. Maybe a 1-year-old. Maybe. Okay. Maybe if you want to put them to sleep.
Okay. I'd recommend it to parents of kids who want to see the movie. If your kid already wants to see it, you can let them see it. It's safe. It's inoffensive. You can just look at your phone the whole time. It's not a big deal. Otherwise, I don't think fans of Sonic would get much out of this. Well, I don't know. Actually, I'm a bad person to ask, because oftentimes fans just get a lot out of movies that I don't see there. So maybe fans of Sonic would like this. I would say general audiences would probably find this boring unless you have kids who are going to get into it. And like, there are worse things your kid could be enjoying, you know,